Future Female Forward has started a very important conversation, but we really have miles to go as far as gender parity at workplaces is concerned. The World Economic Forum tracks gender parity year on year, and their most recent report said that globally 62.9% of women are participating in the global workforce. When it comes to starting businesses, yes, there is an uptick in the number of women starting their own businesses, becoming entrepreneurs, but there is minimal access to finance as well. Then you have the question of digital divide in rural India, which needs to be bridged as well. All of those conversations, very important, and our CHROs today will give us a sense of what they're doing to bridge the gender gap, make sure that women have a stronger representation and a platform to grow right from the shop floor to the boardroom as well. Archana, if I can start with you, give us a sense of the practices that you have at HSBC to, one, allow women to grow, allow them to explore different avenues, different aspects of the business, because today's young men and women coming out of colleges, they like disruption, they like constant change. How do you keep them motivated? How do you try to retain your women workforce as well?
Thanks. At HSBC, we believe we want everybody to bring their authentic self at work, be it man or woman. So we just want the best self to come in. And for us, it starts from the tone from the top. So every senior manager or everybody looks at diversity with the same lens. Besides that, for me, it is the policies that you put together, because if it is not an inclusive environment that you create and call out bad behaviors, you're not going to have a situation where you create a culture and an environment where everybody will thrive. We also believe in measuring what we treasure. So on a monthly basis with my ExCo, we measure the numbers of how our diversity ratios are moving to ensure that, if there is a gap or something that is not going as we planned, we are able to look at it. To be able to attract different workforces and the new generation. Like you said, yes, the asks are very different. We've tried to target, like many other organizations, we've come up with a returnship program. And one of the things that we see in the returnship program is, if you were bringing them into full-time jobs, people didn't want to do the job because they were not sure whether they were ready for it. Line managers were not comfortable. So we bring them as interns. We train them to say, come experience what it is to come back to work after 10 years. And if there is a match in what you want to do and what we have, we place people. We've been able to place 60% of the women we brought in as interns into the organization. And of course, the whole focus on data integration. We now encourage people to do courses and give them honorariums so that they self-develop themselves and keep up with the workforce. So lots of initiatives to keep the workforce. But one most important thing is that our policies ensure that whether it is your own self-development, so training programs for women who want to come back, or training programs for women who are within the organization, how do we provide them a whole landscape where they are able to excel? And in our Ascent program, we've seen 80% of the women who have gone through the program actually have had a promotion or job expansion. So we believe we provide right from the time when we hire you, to we train you, as well as at every life stage of your life. We have very strong maternity policies too. So we'll talk about that maybe in the course of the conversation.
Right. Thanks for giving us a lot to think about, Archana. I'd like to get in Subbaraman at this stage. Subbaraman, when we speak about HCL Tech, there's a very interesting program that HCL Tech has, and it's a mentorship program for young women who want to grow in the organization. They need a mentor, and that mentor will actually help them talk about what they may want to do in the organization, if they want to explore a different field, or maybe just have a conversation about growing up the corporate ladder as well. How important is that conversation and having such a program for young women aspiring to lead the organization someday?
Sure, thank you. So this program that we have is done through various channels. There are a couple of platforms that have come in place. There's something called Ascent that we have within the organization, where we let women employees participate and aspire towards roles that they want to get to. We have a program which is called Stepping Stones, which allows them to choose a career path, right? And to that, assign mentors. So there's a platform called Mentor Me, which allows women colleagues to go choose who they want to have as their mentors. The mentors are trained, they're kind of oriented, saying how you got to work with your prosthesis in terms of how their career should get shaped to, how their next skills or the next technological abilities should be enhanced and so on. So that's a very, very important element for us, because we know that within the organization, when we want to solve complex problems, you need diverse workforce to be able to look at the problem from every possible aspect, and hence these three elements that we have really come in very, very handy for the company.
All right. Let me get in Ravi, Kyran also at this point. Ravi, if we speak about Bajaj Auto, a legacy automotive company, one of the biggest sellers of scooters once upon a time, and the wheel has come a full circle for Hamara Bajaj, and now you've got the Chetak EVs. And recently when we visited the production line in Pune, we saw women manning several sections of the shop floor as well. What are the kind of changes that Bajaj Auto has done over the years to accommodate more women, some of the challenges that you saw, and what is the kind of representation you have for women in the workforce across the board?
This is actually a very interesting journey that we have been through. I would say last 10 years ago, if you were to ask, we had less than a couple of % of women workforce. Today we are getting closer to 15%. Especially if we were to look at Chetak, which is our new organization, Chetak Technologies, we currently have about 30% of our workforce as women. We have a little bit complexity out there, given that we are a legacy organization. We are transforming ourselves in terms of our workforce diversity. Many things that we have to do. We have to start with, typically in our TPM way, we look at what is the issue, what is the root cause analysis that we have to do, what are the bottlenecks, and we'll have to go step by step to kind of eliminate every one of them. Everything from hiring to assimilation to development to giving them growth opportunities to culture. In every step of the way we'll have to work, and we have actually transformed the way we have actually looked at it. But the core of it, I would say, is the philosophy with which we are operating, right? One, we do not want to be paternalistic. It's very easy to swing the pendulum and try to be paternalistic, right? We want to be supportive, but not paternalistic, right? And honestly, we go back to what do women want at some level, right, in terms of working environment. They want to feel that it's home. It is where they want to be. And so what do we need to do to ensure that that kind of a culture is created in an organization? It was not easy, definitely. In many cases, we had to ask the question ourselves saying, is this the kind of environment that we want our daughters and our wives to come and work in, right? That kind of a difficult conversation had to happen with multiple places. All of that has led to where we are today. To us, it is a journey. Like with anything else in TPM, there is no end goal. We don't have an end goal. We don't have a 25%, 30%. We just don't have any goal. For us, it's a continuous improvement.
Balachandar, if I could ask you about the Ola Group, and I'll ask you about Ola Electric first. We've spoken about Bajaj Auto, a legacy automotive player. A startup like Ola Electric, do you think it was easier to have that change on the shop floor, have a larger number of women from the word go, from the beginning?
Let me preface it a little bit. Yeah, I think as Ola, we are a disruptor, startup, as you said. And when you're a startup and a disruptor, you think very differently. And when you think very differently, you don't have any constraints ahead of you. We want to solve for everything that we attempt to, right? Whether it's the product, the design, or the engineering, or the way we sell. And then the question came to HR, what is it that you're going to impact, right? And we didn't want to do these incremental percentages from 20% to 25% and fight with that and struggle with that. I've been on the other side with multinationals, so I know what the struggle is all about. So this is such a refreshing change when you start with a clean slate. You take a pledge that I will build 100% women shop floor. Right? And Anisha, you all met her today. She was here on stage. We have 1,600 Anishas at work who build your scooter. Yeah. And I think it's more a strategic call, a decision, and then you solve for every constraint. Else, you are incrementally solving for things, and I don't think that works for me. Yeah, you have to take a pledge and you have to go after it. And that's the Ola story.
All right, so we'll ask you more in a bit about the Ola story, about Ola cabs, pink cabs as well. Nitin, if I could bring you in at this point. If you were to ask you about Deloitte's example, there must be so many partners, so many companies consulting you. What is the advice that you're giving them about increasing the representation of women, the kind of targets that they need to work with, and why is it important to act on this and act now?
Thanks, Parikshit, and happy to be here. So a couple of things. Look, if we kind of zoom out and look at the evolution of D&I in corporate India, I would say it's really gathered steam in the last decade or so. And there are maybe two lenses to policy. One is what regulators have pushed, and you could say it's a carrot or a stick, whichever way you look at it, but then equally what companies themselves have embarked on. From the regulatory perspective, I think a couple of big milestones. The first was obviously the Companies Act in 2013, which mandated female representation on the board. And that's up to, I believe, nearly 70% today for some of the largest companies in India. So big take in terms of compliance. The second was acts like the Paternity Act 2017, doubled the maternity leave available, mandated creche facilities, childcare facilities at the workplace. And the third, more recently, has been ESG, and the more recent mandates to mandatorily disclose D&I initiatives and policies. So I'd like to believe that will create a sense of transparency as well as accountability for the corporate world. I think we've had some fantastic examples from my fellow panelists here as well as the previous panel. But the general direction of travel from a policy perspective has been investing in, of course, women-friendly benefits. So that could be menstrual leaves, it could be the ergonomic design of the workplace, it could be other child-friendly benefits. The second really has been around sort of training and development, and I would say that extends not only to the women themselves, but also to the wider organization, right? How do you tackle 4 issues around unconscious bias, for example, in your hiring, in your promotion, etc. But to me, the biggest revolution has been, the companies which have traversed the path successfully. This started out 10 years ago as a very HR-led exercise, and it was a bunch of sporadic programs. And I think in the leading companies today, it's moved from an HR-led to a board and CXO, CEO-led, right? So that's been the shift. And HR still plays a role, but HR plays more of a catalyst and a facilitator.
Radhakrishna at Ashok Leyland, again, a very old automotive company in India. Give us a sense of what's Ashok Leyland's mantra when it comes to gender parity at the workplace. You also have an all-women production line at Hosur. Tell us about that.
Yeah, thanks, Parikshit. First of all, if you see, Ashok Leyland, we come from a typical as male as it could be scenario, right? I mean, we manufacture and sell trucks. So people who have been making trucks and those people who are driving trucks are, as male as it would be. But if you look at the mobility industry or the mobility space is in for a very exciting rate of change in the near future. So be it, telematics, alternate fuels, we realize that if we don't bring in an inclusive work environment, then we will really lose out on how agile we could be as a company. So what we did was, we said, okay, I mean, we are a very large company. We said, we won't go in for a percentage change, like as if, we will get 5% or 10%. But we said, let us work across the spectrum of our operations. So we started off with the all-women engine shop in Hosur. And again, engine being the heart of the vehicle. So we said, that's where we should start. So today we have a 80-strong all-women engine line, which is manned completely by women, be it the planning, the supply, the maintenance, everything is done by women. Then what we did was, we went to the other end of the spectrum. We have driver training institutes. So we had a batch of 180 women who were trained as heavy vehicle drivers.
Heavy duty truck drivers.
Heavy duty truck drivers. You know, the interesting part is that if you talk to some of them, it is not just a way of livelihood. You know, some of the women said, we want to drive in the army. We want to drive, you know, in the police. We want to drive for the CRPF. So that's when we realized, you know, what we are doing is about, you know, not just a livelihood, but like, you know, the Air Force officers here were saying that it's a way of life, and that's the way they want to, you know, give back to the society. So we are very happy with, you know, what we've done across the spectrum. And also, you know, we just had a dealers conference yesterday in Bangalore. I was also very surprised to see amongst our dealers, there were a lot of, you know, second generation women who've taken up dealerships. So it's very, you know, I would say heartwarming to see the change right from manufacturing to all the way driving trucks.
When it comes to your women employees, what's the most common challenge that you come across that they face, and what's been your advice to them?
The most common challenges are the different life stages that they are. One is marriage, very often leads to relocation, so break in career. The second one, which is a very big one, is maternity. To say that, you know, I want to take this break, and then being torn between taking care of the child and delivering in office. Even when you come into office, your heart is in the house, and when you're home, your mind is in office. So just balancing that whole challenge. So I think this is the biggest gap that we see. And sometimes they do feel that they don't have an even playing field on the table. So very often, because the ratios are not very great. So there could be one woman like me and many more men in the room. So, just that whole, do I have a voice on the table? My advice to them is just bring yourself. What you know, talk about it. Because you have the mind up there, that's all you need to show. And when it comes down to taking a break and, having to move around, it is a fact of life. Decide which partner's career is important at that point of time and decide whether you will be taking a break right now and will your spouse take a break later. Maternity is the tough one over here, and we've seen attrition at that level really go up. So we've come up with very inclusive policies, right from a Mothers on Board program where we say, from counseling the mother who's going to go away on maternity to say it's okay, it is a life stage that you're going into and we are here for you when you come back, being in touch with them for the 6 months that they're away. Also, when they're coming back, we realize that there's a creche facility as per the law, but very often women do not want to put their kids in the creche. So we've come up with a nanny allowance to say you keep a nanny if you don't want to use the creche, but come back to work. We will make it happen. So whether you want to keep a nanny for the child or for your mother-in-law, your mother who's taking care of your child, your call, we give you an allowance every month, up to 6 years of the child, no cap on the number of children you have. Besides that, so we make it easy for them to come back and not take that decision. And we also have got a cohort of women who come back in batches together, so they become each other's support system. So that's my advice, is leverage all this. It will work for you. And flexible working is something that we offer on the plate to them.
Right. Balachandar, I would also like to ask you about what the government can do in terms of changing the mindset. And I'll again go back to the OECD report when it came to digital divide. And they've said that in rural India, almost 72% of the women don't have access to a smartphone. So now this is something which is really disheartening. How do we bridge this divide? How do we allow women entrepreneurs, women in the workforce to flourish? And what role can the government play in changing the mindset?
So I can speak from what happens in Pochampalli. Pochampalli is about an hour and 15 minutes from Hosur. Yeah? People keep asking me, where's your factory? It's about 2 hours from Hosur, in the interior of Tamil Nadu. And when we set out to build a factory there, there was hardly anything around. And today it's a vibrant town. I will not be surprised in the 5 years ahead, it'll become a city. Every girl child, or rather, I shouldn't say girl child, every woman employee that we have are very achievement-oriented and aspirational. And many of them carry a smartphone. Right? I think at one level it's the affordability. And we did not go with minimum wages for them. We said we'll do better than minimum wages. And you must see how active they are in various groups internally on the smartphone. And one I would solve for is affordability. The second I would solve for, if you ask me the question, if you were the government, what would you do? I think one of the things to do is to upgrade our education system in the rural environment, ecosystem. So when we were setting out to hire these 1,600 women, we met 5,000 of them before we got this 1,600, right? So we had to work with polytechnics, we had to work with graduate schools and colleges around in and around 3-4 districts around Pochampalli, right? So when you enter these colleges and when you come out and go back after 3 months, 6 months, the impact that you've made because of how you've been able to influence the education system really changes that digital divide. So I think it has to start with education and followed up with affordability. I think the divide can be bridged.
Right, education and affordability of digital technology. Nitin, if I can come to you once again. We're talking about big corporate houses, but what about MSMEs, small businesses across the country? Where are they when it comes to women representation?
Well, I think there's still some catching up to do. So if I give you like a sort of sector-wise view of this, ITES, financial services and services in general, which includes retail, the gender diversity mix there is somewhere around 30 to 35% women. and it's been trending upwards at a healthy pace. If I double down to manufacturing as a sector and consumer goods, it's probably somewhere in the early to mid-teens. And so, you could probably apply a similar cut to MSMEs playing in those sectors. And the obvious question is, I mean, when you do this comparison of sort of services versus manufacturing, it's not really apple to apple. The reason I say that is because there are a number of factors at play, right? I mean, one is in a manufacturing setup, there are obviously shifts, there are safety issues, there are issues around the workplace standards, there are issues around sort of physical labor and the fact that in a lesser automated setup, there is that much more manual labor required. So it's not easy to kind of, I mean, you could easily theoretically say that, manufacturing can double and manufacturing should be 30%. Yes, I mean, I guess, everybody would want to do that in spirit. But, again, it's a journey.
Raja, I'd like to leave you. I'd like you to leave us with top 3 things that every company now needs to do as far as ensuring greater representation of women. If you can tell us in 30 seconds.
See, quickly, first of all, gender is not binary anymore, right? Gender is a spectrum today. So, in fact, we have not just white and blue-collar workers, we also have Z or Z-collared workers. They are the chatbots. There are companies which have given employee numbers to chatbots as well. So, one is we need to, first of all, think in a very broad sense to say it is not just, having gender diversity, but how can we, make the playing field more level? And I have talked to, many of my women colleagues or also others. They never want a quota. They just said, look, create the level playing field, and whoever is the meritorious in that, let them get the job, right? So we never want a women only for this role or whatever it is. So that's what they want. So companies, what they should do is create as much a level playing field as possible. Then again, create, policies. I mean, we need to sometimes go beyond our traditional mindset when we create policies. So if we do this, then I'm sure that, we will create a very wide, talent pool. Last but not the least, this is, my own personal thing, is that when you write a job description, the lesser number of bullet points you have, the, broader and much richer talent pool you will get. So these are, my thoughts.
All right, pearls of wisdom. Thank you very much, Archana, Ravi, Balachandar, Nitin, Mr. Raja, Subbaraman for joining us. Thank you so much.